May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today I was thinking about, I saw this movie, Living in a Time of Dying. It was about how the vast majority of people who should know better are not facing the facts of the implications of the science of around climate change, and how the situation is much more dire than anybody is admitting, and that we are, it seems very highly likely, headed to a complete disaster for all world civilization in the not too distant future. So I sort of believe this. I don't think the movie made the point well. I just talked to a few people that had done a lot of thought and research on it and stuff. And Indian Elder was cool. This guy who wrote The End of Ice, he was cool, but it didn't have any data, And the Buddhist woman, she was a Dharma teacher. He didn't say what her lineage was or anything. She emphasized that, and her trip was how sad it is. And when you realize what's happening, how you just have to feel just enormous sorrow and sadness. So I was thinking, what will I do today to express and share how I feel about this? And that is, I'm going to read the next chapter in Thank You and Okay, chapter 6. And it's a little longer than the ones that have come before. So I'm going to read it right now. So here we go. Gangbuster Zen, Maruyama, May 16th, 1989. I closed the front door and entered the cool darkness of our garden in the wee hours. A maple branch brushes my head as I manage the brief path of stepping stones. It's still too early for spider webs. A step to the asphalt drive and a hop over the foot-wide mizo, drainage ditch, brings me to the edge of the bamboo grove in Dianchi's grounds. To my right, by the stone wall which bounds the deeper, wider mizo, once a creek, a night heron stands in the sludge. Skirting the bamboo, I cross the sandy soil past knee-high stones and stone shadows cast by a distant flickering fluorescent light. On the central walk by a stone bridge in the dark, I hear the deep honking of an ushigaeru, a sumo-sized bullfrog that calls from beneath the flat lotus leaves in the water of the pond below. It splashes abruptly in the blackness, fleeing to the bottom. I walk in the shadows under the massive sammon, the interior mountain gate, with its dusty old life-sized wooden carvings of human and semi-human saints slowly decaying in the sealed upper chamber where the monks visit and chant to them on New Year's Day. Straight ahead, I see the lights of the Hondo, the main hall. An uguisu, a nightingale, calls from the surrounding pine trees. The morning bell reverberates through the temple grounds and out onto the sleeping homes. The sputter and putt-putts of a motor scooter can be heard approaching from the street outside. It might seem an unwelcome intrusion into the natural sounds, but it's just another regular visitor of the dewy, dim morning. It enters the quiet temple compound, following its headlights along dirt paths to deliver the morning paper. The scooter putters out and away down a narrow side street. The hondo at Dayanji is even bigger than the samon, with a two-tiered tile roof that sits on it like an oversized hat. All the buildings of Hogoji and Kyushu would fit inside this one hall of Dayanji. The light from the hondo shines through 6 large bell-shaped windows with thick latticework. 2 stone lanterns, as tall as I am, are positioned on either side of the walk. While I'm waiting, I like to stand before the lanterns and line up their silhouettes within the glow from 2 of the bell-shaped windows. When I get them centered just right, the entire form of the building sits in my head in a way that I quite like. Sometimes I pretend that I have discovered a secret position that can unlock the mysteries of the mind. One morning when I stood so, the right half of me fell off into deep space. The left half didn't follow for some reason. Maybe it wasn't lined up right. A cloud passes between the moon and me, over the hondo and down the connected buildings and walled-in gardens. Large wooden doors in the hall leading to the hondo swing open, releasing light. Footsteps come from the corner between the bell tower and the entrance to the kitchen. It is the women coming from their rooms. On the other side, a handbell rings, and a procession of men comes from the zendo, zazen hall area behind me, their hands together at the solar plexus in the position called shashu. They follow a path through the pines and swing around in front of the hondo. Their heads are all bent down watching the uneven stones in the path, and I join the end of the line. We leave our sandals on the floor inside the entranceway by the hall and quickly step onto the walkway and up the stairs into the hondo to chant the morning sutras. 3.5 centuries back, Lord Maeda supported the construction of Dayanji. According to Zen, a monk from San Antonio, the temple was built to be stately and expansive, not only because Maeda was a benefactor of his faith, but also to show off his wealth and power, though apparently the venture crippled him financially. Zen said it was built quickly, utilizing every available worker in Maeda's territory for several years. Dayanji still dedicates services to Maeda's ancestors. Sometimes on our way up into the woods, Elin and I walk behind Dayanji through the Maeda family graveyard. It's not a usual ohaka where ashes are interred, but a true graveyard where corpses are buried. That is still the imperial thing to do. In Japan, they didn't lay them down, though. They sat them in the seiza position, resting on their knees. The grass grows high around the many prestigious tombs. Unlike the regular ohaka, which can be found on other parts of the hillside, the Maeda graves are untended. There is no bouquet of flowers, nor glass of sake, no burned matches, candles, or incense butts. Often, from that hill, Elin and I have surveyed our level neighborhood below, the suburbs of Lord Maeda. Since his lifetime, buildings have spread over the rice fields below, and there are far fewer birds. Only the temple buildings remain the same. At Dayanji morning services, the gang lines up in robes on both sides of the altar, about 30 feet apart. It's an interesting and diligent crowd of about 20, 5 of whom are women. At 1 minute to 4 a.m., they will be found standing on tatami overlooking a central wooden floor that shines like a pool. There are 6 from the U.S., 3 French, and a couple of Germans, a Canadian, a Spaniard, and a monk from India. The Japanese population now stands at about 8, among them 2 strong-willed nuns. This sort of collection of foreign and domestic monks and laymen and women is rare. Elin and I treasure living next door to these people. They're busy running after the schedule, sitting zazen till late at night and taking naps in the afternoon, but we meet each of them now and then in the temple kitchen, on a path, at the kiln, at our house. Some we see more often, but during service, as in all formal practice, one doesn't relate, one listens. The small brass bell is hit. We quickly bow and sit. I pull the sutra book out of my sleeve and place it in front of me, parallel and adjacent to the edge ribbon of the tatami. The bell, hanging from a beam outside the back door, is still being rung. We're waiting for the abbot. A young German visitor sitting next to me is told by a French student to sit in line with the rest of us, with knees about 6 inches from the tatami edge. The sutra book he's been loaned is positioned for him. He straightens himself up and looks around anxiously to see if there's anything else that he's doing wrong. The others look relaxed and comfortable, sitting with straight backs. Watanabe Roshi, the abbot of Dayanji, comes in as the mid-range hanging bell concludes its roll-down. He moves down the wide wooden aisle that skirts the edge of the spacious hall, wood that flows toward the altar, going between square pillars of hinoki, Japanese cypress, valued for its longevity and beauty, and under long beams. There he is, the master of this place for sure. He is always there with his incense and presence, doing his job day in and day out. It is because of him that each of us is here. He is a rock, short, solid, and 50. I watch him walk up to the altar. Everything he does has punch, style, and attention. As usual, the opening chant is the Heart Sutra, the Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra, the core of the perfection of wisdom, one of the principal scriptures of Northern Mahayana Buddhism. It articulates the central philosophy of emptiness. Remarkably, it is recited first in English. An hour later, the last chant is the 4 vows in Japanese and then in English. It goes something like this. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are limitless, I vow to cut them off. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. It's a tall order. I was taught by Soto Zen teachers just to chant it and not get hung up on the impossibility of it. Watanabe's Rinzai Zen way is more like a fist hitting a palm, saying, it's possible, try to do it as hard as you can every instant. Taizen says Soto is soft, Rinzai is hard. It doesn't bother me to move from one to the other. In this business, you get used to contradictions, even if you stick to one sect or one teacher. If contradictions are in the way, then the 4 vows will be impossible. I'd never had anything to do with Rinzai before outside of reading. The first time I visited Daionji and ate lunch with the monks, I was struck by the difference in style between Daionji and Hogoji. It was rough here compared to the proper Soto eating style. They chanted loudly and energetically, passing the aluminum pots and wooden bowls of food down with thumps and serving them quickly. It was the Wild West to Hogoji's Boston. Watanabe sits at morning service on a long, thick, purple cushion, while beneath him, under the floor, in the center of the room, rests a rowboat-sized earthen bowl that resonates the voices, drum and bells like the body of a guitar. Rich tones and overtones are created by the chanting in the wide, high-ceilinged wood room. It's the Daionji Dharma train blowing its whistle in the tunnel of night and steaming on through forests of sound. It's not beautiful in the way that Gregorian chants are, but it wears well, calls profoundly to our deep intentions, and is a dynamite way to start the day. Soto Zen temples begin the morning quietly with zazen and get to the chanting later, but in Rinzai it's gangbusters from the word go. Rouse that ki energy in your belly and give it all you've got. There are times when the energy in my spine gets activated and I feel like there's an earthquake happening. One morning I felt that way, and then I noticed the room rippling, the people bobbing up and down, and the pillars shaking. That was an earthquake, a 7.1 a few hundred miles away. After about an hour in the Hondo, we file out to the kitchen altar, where we chant some more, and then silently cross the grounds to the Zendo, where the morning service concludes with the Heart Sutra. Watanabe leaves, and the monks take off their kesa and hang their rakusu around their necks. At one whack of the clackers, everyone assumes the zazen position, and I walk out of the room through a large opening at the rear and sit on a raised tatami platform in the guest area. A monk picks up a mallet and hits the han, the wooden board that hangs outside. Then silence. From far away, a new ringing is heard. It's Watanabe striking the small sanzen bell. Time to meet the Roshi one-on-one. The head monk in the Zendo hits a handheld bell 3 times. There is electricity in the air. He hits it a 4th. The first time I was there, I was just hunkering in for an hour and a half of zazen with no idea of what was going to happen next. Suddenly, everyone leapt up, jumped down to the floor into their zori, sandals, with a kaboom, and tore out of there as fast as they could, like the building was going to explode. They weren't trying to get away from something. They were rushing pell-mell to sanzen with Watanabe, hustling as an expression of their enthusiasm for their practice, for breaking through to an understanding of what life and death are. Now I run with them. Some of us are working on koan, the trans-logical questions of Rinzai Zen. Some are developing breathing through the practice of susokukan, breath counting. But all of us are hauling ass to get back to that building we just came from. Once people get to the door, their position in line to see Watanabe is determined, and they stop running and act like ladies and gentlemen again. But until they get there, it's full steam ahead. They cut through the woods and cross the stone walks, and they leave behind a few sandals here and there. If it's dry, they raise dust. If it's wet, they may slip. The head monk leaves the Zendo last and gathers up stray footwear on his way over. He doesn't run. He pulls up the rear. It's his job. A friendly French monk named Daisan takes his time getting there, too. He likes to be last in line. He even comes in behind Den-san, the blind nun. I always go fast enough to be ahead of her. She's getting faster by the day. She knows every stone and bush. Sometimes while I'm chugging ahead, I turn back and see her moving steadily forward, her red-tipped white cane snappily probing the ground in front of her. If I see she's gaining on me, I give a little extra push and make sure to get in before her. I have some standards. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Zanur with Dogget Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.